first grade. I'm ready for, chapter 3 of April Fool's Frogs. It's called More Frogs. They were halfway down Red Rose Lane when Leon saw something. Look, he said, there's a book leaning against that tree. They ran over to get a closer look. Didn't the note say gawks leave clues under trees and in books? Asked Casey. Yes, Daddy said. She lifted up the book. There was a piece of paper inside of it. Is that another note? Casey asked. She pulled it out of the book. Leon picked up something else. What's that? Asked Casey. A rock? No, said Leon. It's a feather. It's beautiful, said Dottie. Here's your picture. Could it be from a gawk? Asked Casey. It's definitely a clue, said Dottie. She turned to the page in her notebook called Clues for Missing Gawk. She wrote down first clue, bright blue feather with pale yellow spots. Casey read the new note out loud. A gawk is missing. Can you help find it? If you see a red rock, look behind it. Gawks are shy. Don't call their names. But one was seen on Fernwood Lane. Fernwood Lane is on the way to town, said Dottie. We can go there on our way to talk to Mr. Cliff, said Leon. Look, said Casey. She pointed to a house. That's where the new people live. They walked 13 Red Rose Lane. A girl was sitting on the front steps. I remember you, said Dottie. You were with your mom looking at the poster for the April Fool's Festival. I'm Lizzie, said the girl. Are you two going to enter the look-alike contest? Dottie and Casey smiled. Why? Asked Casey. Do you think we look alike? Leon thinks if we dress the same, we really might win, added Dottie. Who's Leon? Asked Lizzie. Dottie and Casey turned to introduce Leon, but he was nowhere to be seen. This was nothing new. Sometimes Leon wandered away looking for rocks. Leon called Dottie and Casey together. Leon came running out from behind a bush. Sorry, he said, I found another frog. I love frogs, said Lizzie. The frog squirmed. Leon walked to the wagon. He put the frog in the bucket. Lizzie walked to the wagon, too. You know what I love even more than frogs? Brownies. You do? Said Casey. That's great, because my mom made these brownies for you. She handed over the tray. Her mom makes the best chocolate chip brownies in the world, said Leon. Have you seen my mom's store? Asked Casey. It's called Sweetie Pie. Yes, said Lizzie. It's right near the new store that's opening tomorrow. I didn't know there was a new store, said Casey. What's it called? It's a secret, said Lizzie. Why? Asked Casey. Lizzie shrugged. Do you want to come to town with us? Asked Casey. No, thanks, said Lizzie, but thanks for the brownies. She took the brownies and went inside her house. Casey looked around. Where did Leon go now? She asked Dottie. Leon, Dottie and Casey called together. Leon didn't answer. They turned the corner onto Fernwood Lane. Leon was standing there waiting. He had found something, and the big smile on his face meant it was something good. Chapter 4. More Clues. Leon opened his hand. I found the red rock, he said. The one mentioned in the note? Asked Casey. Yes, said Leon, and there was something under it. Leon put the rock in his pocket. He pulled out a note and read it. A gawk is missing. Where could it be? Some say a gawk's favorite number is 3. Gawks are shy. Don't call their names. But one was seen on Cherry Lane. We'll pass Cherry Lane on the way to town, said Dottie. Let's go, said Casey. Wait, said Leon. There's one more thing. He opened his other hand. I found this under the note. Dottie and Casey looked at the thin white string in Leon's hand. Casey touched it. It was as hard as wire. What is it? She asked. There's a picture of the string. That's what Uncle Eddie puts on his rod when he takes me fishing, said Dottie. Could a gawk be a kind of fish? Asked Casey. She put the string in the shoebox. Dottie added it to the list of clues for a missing gawk. It could be, said Leon, but the blue feather we found made me think it was a bird. Could it be a birdfish? Asked Casey. I've never heard of a birdfish, said Leon, but I never heard of a gawk either. They continued down the block. They put flyers in the mailboxes of all the people they knew. They gave one to Mrs. Miller, who was standing in front of her house. Thank you, said Mrs. Miller, but she didn't read it. She looked upset. Is everything okay? Asked Casey. Not really, said Mrs. Miller. I took this sandbox out last night to clean it. She pointed to a large green plastic sandbox on her front lawn. My grandkids are coming and they love sand, she explained. Casey heard a noise. What's that? She asked. That's the problem, said Mrs. Miller. I was about to fill up the sandbox when I heard that noise. Could there be a gawk in the sandbox? Asked Casey. A shout? Asked Mrs. Miller. A gawk, said Dottie. What's a gawk? Asked Mrs. Miller. Leon took the blue feather out of the shoebox. We're not sure, he said, but it might have feathers like this. Frogs don't have feathers, said Mrs. Miller. Frogs, said Dottie. We thought they were gawks. I don't know anything about gawks, said Mrs. Miller, but I do know that my sandbox is filled with frogs. Dottie, Casey, and Leon lifted up the lid to the sandbox and looked inside. There are 6 frogs, Dottie said. I cannot keep 6 frogs in my sandbox, said Mrs. Miller. We could bring them to Mr. Cliff, said Leon. We're on our way to see him now. He looked in the wagon. I think we need some more buckets, though. I think I've got a couple, said Mrs. Miller. She went and got 2 more buckets. Casey put Mrs. Miller's frogs in the buckets, and they continued on their way. Did you find it yet? A voice called out. They turned. Warren Bunn and Derek Fleck were riding their bikes. They skidded to a stop. You don't have to bother looking for a gawk anymore, said Warren. He waved one of the flyers in the air. I know all about it, and I'm going to be the one to find it. Yeah, said Derek. We're going to find it. Warren pointed at Leon's foot. Hey, Leon, he said, how did your shoelace get stuck in that slimy thing? Leon looked to see what his shoelace was stuck on. April Fool's, said Warren. Made you look. It's not April Fool's Day yet, said Leon. Warren and Derek rode off laughing. Warren laughed so hard his bike started to wobble. He rode into the curb and fell off. Are you okay? Dottie called. I'm fine, Warren said. He got back on his bike. Don't forget to wear your helmet, a voice called out. Dottie, Casey, and Leon turned. Officer Gill was standing at the corner. Come on, said Casey. I bet Officer Gill knows what a gawk is. And the 3 friends ran over to ask him. There's all those kids. Oh, now I'm on chapter 5, turning into toads. Officer Gill was talking to a man. Meet the Calendar Club, Officer Gill said to the man. They're my favorite detectives. This is Mr. Mack, Officer Gill told the 3 friends. He owns the new store opening near Sweetie Pie. We heard about your store, said Dottie. What's it called? Asked Casey. That's a big secret, said Mr. Mack. Why? Asked Casey. You'll have to wait till tomorrow to find out, said Mr. Mack. Are you coming to the April Fool's Festival? There we go. That's Officer Gill. The 3 friends nodded. Great, said Mr. Mack. I'll see you there. He turned to Officer Gill. Thanks for all your help, he said. That's what I'm here for, said Officer Gill. Mr. Mack hurried away. Solve any mysteries today? Officer Gill asked the 3 friends. Not yet, said Dottie. Have you ever heard of a gawk? Asked Casey. A grouse? Asked Officer Gill. A gawk, said Dottie. Officer Gill noticed the buckets in Casey's wagon. Are those gawks? No, said Leon. Those are frogs. That's what I thought, said Officer Gill. We've got 9 of them, said Dottie. That's a lot of frogs, said Officer Gill. I've got a lot of calls about frogs today. Frogs have been showing up in some very odd places. Where? Asked Casey. Officer Gill took his notebook out of his back pocket. Dottie took her notebook out of her back pocket. Officer Gill read from his notebook. Mrs. Faust found a frog in her shoe. Mr. Elder found a frog in the school. Mr. Elder was the principal of Fruitvale Elementary School. Who had put a frog in the school? Asked Casey. I don't know, said Officer Gill. Can you think of anyone? Casey and Dottie looked at each other. They had the same idea. Leon knew what they were thinking. It can't be Warren Bunn, he said. He thinks frogs will give him warts. I know, said Officer Gill. I had a long talk with Warren about pranks this morning, but I don't think he's behind this one. We'll let you know if we find anything, said Dottie. Thanks, said Officer Gill, and good luck finding your grouse. It's a gawk, said Dottie. What's a gawk? Asked Officer Gill. We think it's either an owl or a fish or a frog, said Leon. But it could be a bug, said Dottie. I'll keep my eyes open for one of those, said Officer Gill. I'll see you at the festival tomorrow. He waved goodbye. Leon was waving back when he noticed something. Look, he said to his friends. He pointed to a nearby tree. There's a box. He walked over to the tree and picked up the box. The number 3 is painted on the lid, he said. Didn't the last clue say gawks like the number 3? Asked Casey. Dottie nodded. Leon opened the box. He looked inside. It's a tooth, he said. A gawk tooth? Casey asked. Dottie took a look. It looks like the fang of a snake. Could a gawk be a snake? Asked Casey. There's a note here too, said Leon. He took out the note and read it out loud. Gawks go to sleep early, and so should you. Tomorrow there's a lot to do. The gawk must be found, or you'll be a toad. Bring your clues to the festival at Fruitvale Park Road. Find the gawk and you'll get prizes galore. Surprises supplied by your friends at the store. What store? Asked Casey. I don't understand the part about being a toad, said Leon. Dottie looked into one of the buckets. Maybe these aren't frogs, she said. Maybe they're toads. Do you think they were once people? Asked Casey. Do you think they were people who looked for gawks and couldn't find them? No, said Dottie. She stared at the frogs. That one does look a little sad, though, she said, pointing to one of them. That one looks kind of mad, Leon said, pointing to another. I think we better talk to Mr. Cliff, said Dottie. They hurried to Pet Mead to see what Mr. Cliff could tell them. Do you want to think one looks sad and one looks mad? Guess we'll find out. That's all for now.